The Lions last year for 15 games, and really for like 7 of those 15 wins, were just terrorizing the other team. They were the bullies, and that was the team's identity. It wasn't just that they were a good football game with trick plays. They would demoralize the other team and enjoy doing it. Think about that Tennessee game. Think about that Jacksonville game. Even some of the divisional games. The Lions were the big bad bullies between the going for it on fourth down, the run defense, how hard hitting they were, the bruising runs with David Montgomery, held the trick plays, the running up the scores. That was the identity of the Lions the past 2 seasons. And yesterday, they were on the other end of it. If your name's not Isaac Tesla or Sam Laporta, you deserve some blame here. Like, this was a full-on every single person on the team other than those 2 guys was not very good. Like, Laporta and Tesla kind of get a pass, but even a Jake Bates who goes 2 for 2 on the field goals is like, dude, you punted a kick through the back of the end zone twice and put him on the 35-yard line. It's just an all-around terrible game. Coaches including in this, just a disaster from Dan Campbell in terms of the clock management, which continues to be a theme. The 2 new coordinators, not necessarily great debuts for either of them, and Calvin Shepard and John Morton. The offensive line was terrible against the pass and the run. Defensive line couldn't generate any pressure whatsoever. Somewhat of a no-show for Hutch. We'll get into that too. DJ Reed and Terran Arnold both just getting tormented, but I think that was more so to do with the fact that Jordan Love had all the time in the world to throw the ball. The PFF grades haven't come out yet, but if I had to guess around noon when they do, Jordan Love had to have had the longest time to throw of any quarterback in the NFL this weekend. He was under no pressure whatsoever from the first quarter to the very end of the game. He sat there, clean pocket, and was able to dissect this team, which kind of refuses to make any adjustments in the middle of the game. They have their identity on defense. They want to use the 3 linebackers. They don't want to be in nickel. They want to load up and stop you from running the football. The problem is the Packers said, that's fine. We're just going to air the ball out and destroy you down the field because you're not going to get home on any of these blitzes. Packers controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. That's the reason that the Lions lost. And it's the reason that the Lions won 15 games last year, because they never got dominated at the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball. So to see them do that and be that out of control in the game so early on, and then it never fix itself, that was, to me, the biggest red flag going in to the game. And you know, the biggest red flag, the biggest worry we had with this Detroit Lions team going into the year had to have been the interior of the offensive line. We knew that the O-line wasn't going to be this dominant number 1 unit in the NFL again. We expected a little bit of regression. What we didn't expect was for them to be an absolute disaster to the point where it hindered the Lions' ability to have not just a good offense, but a functioning offense. 0 explosive plays for this group for 4 straight quarters. And when the offensive line, specifically the interior, is going to be that bad, it does 2 things. One, it's going to result in a poor Jared Goff game. We know Jared Goff under pressure versus when he's not under pressure are 2 completely different quarterbacks. When he's getting pressured from the interior, there's only so much he can do because he doesn't have the speed to outrun these guys or buy himself any time. It's going to result in a ton of checkdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs led the team in targets and receptions with 10 of them, but none of them went more than 6 yards. He was sacked 4 times, 9 QB hits. I'm guessing upwards of 15 to 20 pressures. We'll find that out in a short amount of time when these PFF grades come out. But, man, he was just under pressure the entire time, had no time to throw the ball down the field. I can't recall one single Jameson Williams deep bomb attempt or a Sam Laporta thing. Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra both had a reception of about 20 yards. But besides that, there was no explosiveness down the field whatsoever. It felt like Jameson Williams, who is a paid man, by the way, now, the 3-year extension signed through 2029, it felt like he was almost non-existent throughout the course of the game, too, because Goff was under pressure so fast every single time. The second thing that it does is obviously result in a sluggish running game. 2.1 yards per rush. There's a stat for you. It's the lowest yards per rush for a Detroit Lions team since 2023 Week 6 against Tampa Bay. They couldn't move the ball on the ground, which led to all these 3rd and longs, and we already went over. Jared Goff had no time to let the routes develop down the field. So if the interior offensive line is going to be that poor and result in those two things, I got bad news for everyone. That doesn't seem like a week one fluke. Like, remember last year, week 2 against Tampa, when it was like, yeah, that was weird. They couldn't figure it out in the red zone. That was a fluke. With how bad the offensive line was yesterday, specifically those guys in the middle between a washed-up Graham Glasgow, who was terrible at the end of last season, 9 pressures he allowed in that playoff game. Got some thoughts on that in a second. And then the Christian Mahogany, who's had 2 starts coming into yesterday, Tate Ratledge, obviously the rookie. The trio of those guys in the middle lost basically every rep they possibly could have, especially when they lined up Micah Parsons over the middle, who, by the way, was the best player on the field yesterday, even though he had, 10 snaps? Significantly outperformed Aiden Hutchinson. When he lined up over Penei Sewell, he won just about every single matchup. Thought Sewell had a particularly awful game walking around Midland in his jersey yesterday. Didn't feel very good because Micah Parsons lit him up and put him on skates a few times. Rashawn Gary destroyed Taylor Decker, almost resulted in a safety. And then Tate Ratledge and those guys in the middle, just confused, it looked like. Every single play. When that's going to be the case, this is going to be a long season. This is going to be a long season if that's going to be the case every single game. And honestly, guys, I don't have a reason to sit here and say that it's going to be different right now because of how much they got dominated. And after the game, there was 3 things that I couldn't stop thinking about specifically regarding this offensive line. One, I wish Graham Glasgow would have been the player that the Lions were to have cut to save money rather than Zadarius Smith. If you would have cut Graham Glasgow, you would have saved $11 million over the next 2 seasons, which is the exact number you saved over 2 seasons by cutting Zadarius Smith. I wish that would have been Graham Glasgow because he was once again terrible yesterday. 9 pressures he allowed in that playoff game. Let's just put this into perspective. Kevin Zeitler didn't allow more than 3 pressures once last season. Not once. So I wish they would have cut Graham Glasgow. And again, 2020 is always hindsight, but I wish that would have been the player they cut for cap savings rather than Zadarius Smith, because they really could have used Zadarius Smith out there yesterday. And then the second thing would be, kind of to go with that, I wish Kevin Zeitler was still around. Man, having Kevin Zeitler on this team would have been a huge addition, and I don't know if they would have asked him to play center for the first time, or if Tate Ratledge would have just, taken over for that spot. But clearly he was the better player than Graham Glasgow last season, and it continues to blow my mind that they let him walk for just $9 million. That's how much he signed with for Tennessee. He was on a $6 million deal last year. I remember, 2 days after the playoffs ended for the Detroit Lions last year, we put out a pyramid of the most important guys to bring back. Kevin Zeitler was at the top of that pyramid for me, over the likes of Dan Skipper, or Levi Wunzurike, or Carlton Davis. The guys that I wanted to bring back more than anybody was Kevin Zeitler because of how important he was to this offensive line. And you saw the consequences of not bringing him back yesterday because you had a trio of brand new guys, which results, which brings me to the third thing that I couldn't stop thinking about. And this is such an unfair thing to be upset with. It's really not fair to this person, but I can't help myself but to think about it. Frank Ragnow waiting until June to retire, screwed over the Lions in a way that I don't think we could have comprehended at the time. And I'm not specifically mad at this person, but the timing of it is just extremely unfortunate, because if he would have just retired at the end of the season or, before free agency started and given the Lions time to prepare a plan rather than a 33-year-old washed-up guard who you're moving over to center and 2 guys who have barely played any NFL games, if not haven't played an NFL game, you could have went and signed Ryan Kelly for $9 million, who ended up not only not signing with you, but signing with Minnesota this offseason. There's no logical way I should be mad at Frank Ragnow. I'm not mad, but man, him retiring when he did hurt the Lions in a way that I don't think we really comprehended at the time. It wasn't just the loss of him. It was, how are you going to replace him now that free agency's over and the draft has already happened? If the O-line is going to be that bad, guys, I'm not going to lie to you, my panic meter's probably at a 6, which honestly seems conservative based on how bad they were yesterday. Dominated in every fashion. And that was the backbone of this Lions team the last couple of years. And if they're losing out on that, I guess I don't really know how they fix it, because their quarterback is, immobile, which I'm not even saying is a negative thing, but if you're getting pressure from the interior and you have an immobile quarterback, how are explosive plays supposed to generate down the field? How are you supposed to develop this running game that is so important to Jared Goff's play action? I'm at a 6, guys. I don't know if that's high. I don't know if that's low, but there's definitely real concern with this Detroit Lions team the rest of the season. And I don't mean to put too much pressure on this next game against Chicago, but I don't know if anyone's peeked at the schedule. You got to go to Baltimore week 3. And for those of you who saw the Ravens yesterday, I know they ended up losing that game. But man, that does not look very fun to go against as a defense, does it? Derrick Henry's still that guy. Lamar Jackson's still that guy. That goes without saying. You're going to have to play in a week 3 game on the road Monday night against Baltimore, which means next week against Chicago is a must-win unless you want to start the season 0-3. There's a lot of pressure on this Lions team next week, guys. They're going to have to figure this thing out a lot faster than we realized. That 12, 13 wins that Kyle and I predicted before the season started, man, if there was one thing that was going to haunt the Lions and hold them back from that happening, it was how is the interior of the offensive line going to hold up? Well, early answers to that, not very well. 989-837-6125. Are you in a full-on panic for this Detroit Lions team? What's your panic meter at 1 to 10? I'm sitting there at a 6, and that almost feels conservative. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this too. 989-837-6125.